Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. We are here to discuss Mass Golf's HubSpot business units with Vermont Golf Association and Connecticut Golf Association. My name is Santana Shipley, and I'm the Community Operations Manager with the IAGA.
Hi, Mike Weiss, Senior Manager of Gin Services for Mass Golf.
Hi, I'm Riley. I'm the manager of technology at Mass Golf.
Just kind of rolling in here, we'll just go ahead with the just creation and ideation phases with your HubSpot business units. How did those kind of planning and beginning stages look like? And I guess both from the perspective internally with Mass Golf as well as with Vermont and Connecticut, just kind of what did that look like?
Yeah, so I think it kind of started as an idea. We were kind of approached by associations potentially looking to use HubSpot functionality in maybe kind of in a limited way to begin with the potential to kind of branch out from there and do more and continue to grow their use of HubSpot. But again, because obviously sometimes smaller associations, maybe ones without the staff capabilities, they were looking for kind of maybe an entry point into using HubSpot. And we had heard of some other associations kind of doing that, being that entry point for AGAs in their region to kind of join in. So I think it was a combination of internally thinking about how can we best serve the golf community in New England, and also being approached by associations that were looking for kind of that entry point into HubSpot. So I think that's where it really kicked off, and how we were looking again to potentially do something that would help our neighboring AGAs with their golf operations.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And I want to give credit to Mike and the team. The business unit idea and the connection between both Connecticut and Vermont had already existed prior to starting. So we kind of started hit the ground running when I was onboarded. The kind of what that looked like as far as the planning stages. We had conversations with both organizations saying, "Hey, what are you looking to get out of HubSpot? Like, what are some of your goals, and how can we help you with leveraging HubSpot achieve these goals?" And to Mike's point, with the smaller teams, the automation piece is huge. Just being able to sort of differentiate like what to work on now, and then just let us know what to focus on, and then we were able to help them. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And then just out of curiosity, what, I guess, the timeline for this, like what did that look like and how long did it kind of take to actually implement?
Yeah, I mean, we've actually been talking to Connecticut for over a year at this point. We started in 2024, got a certain way, and then obviously when the season starts to kick up in May and into June, we kind of left it at a point that wasn't completely finished. And then fortunately, we were able to bring Riley in at the beginning of this year, and she has really helped and kind of continued to push these initiatives forward. With Vermont, it was kind of a 2 to 3 month you know planning, basically February, March, and April here in 2025. And Connecticut was able to kind of pick back up where they left off in the middle of 24 and kind of go along with the same time frame there. We're kind of training them both concurrently, but not together, because obviously they have different questions, they have different uh, use cases, different goals, as Riley said. So we really have been able to kind of get them up and running within the last couple months, but also being able to work with their schedule and kind of to their needs and what they wanted to do in 2025.
Right on. I think that goes kind of just perfectly into just the day to day of what those relationships look like. Riley, I know you're very hands on with that. So just kind of curious what that your day to day looks like managing those two relationships while also, managing your mass golf responsibilities. And if there are any specific like setups, workflows, or routines that kind of help you to stay on top of that.
So I think just kind of on a weekly basis, we have a one-off. We'll do a one-time meeting with them. We've kind of been doing that since the beginning of the year. Just sort of meeting them with them once a week, kind of pulse check. How's everything going on your side? What can we do to help? As far as my responsibilities and sort of the balancing of it, I typically would look at our dashboards that I set up. I have one that has all of our marketing contacts on it, just for one example, since we use that. Just sort of maintaining those lists, looking at that every day, just making sure nothing's kind of crazy. I would say that. I would also say, for as far as support, they know that if they want to reach out to me, we can do that. But yeah, we do have that weekly meeting, just knowing that everybody gets kind of busy. But with the seasonality of golf, especially over here in New England, obviously they might have more questions and a little bit more time in the off season, but as like summer is approaching and golf season is here, yeah, we've slowed that down quite a bit. Mike, do you have some more to add?
Yeah, I think something that Riley has done that has really been able to kind of keep things organized, at least from the training and the onboarding process, is she has a PowerPoint document that she is constantly updating and kind of editing and making sure has the latest information. It's got, take home activities and kind of, items for them to work on while they're in between those weekly meetings, but also items for us to work on. And again, they're kind of it's constantly updated based on like how much progress they made the week before, how much progress we were able to make, some maybe some roadblocks that we might have run into that I'm sure we'll talk about later. But it's kind of a great organization. I mean, Riley is really organized. I'm a little bit more kind of as things come up. Just the nature of my job, it's as things come up, I kind of deal with them and help put out fires. But Riley's more of like, okay, this is a weekly agenda, that we're going to have to we address each time. It's certainly not a set in stone kind of like shackles type thing, but it's good to kind of just keep a high level of what did we work on last time, what do we want to work on this time, anything that comes up during the week, she adds it in there. So that's been very helpful in this process.
I think that's a perfect segue. You mentioned the roadblocks, which obviously with a collaboration of this scale, bound to happen. So kind of just want to ask about any of the challenges that you've faced while managing, two different associations within your business unit and how you've worked together to kind of overcome those obstacles.
Yeah, so I think like just to start off too is just looking at different organizations and different like what they need. That's kind of a big tell, and like that'll usually be some of those roadblocks, staffing issues or just the time management piece of it. Were you able to get to this? Are you able to kind of execute what you're able to do? You kind of have to be flexible in that case or in that sense with these people and with these orgs. And there is that like the empathy too. Like again, like Mike said, with our planning and our strategy sort of PowerPoint that we were having, nothing was set in stone. There was no, hey, you need to have this done by this date or vice versa. It was this is what we're going to try to accomplish. If we can get to it, great. If we can't, then we'll try it again for the next week. Because like he said, everything kind of comes up, things happen, life happens. But just as long as we're all kind of on the same page for that end goal, I think that was usually the best part. And I think that here within the AGAs is everybody wants to do right by the golfer. Everybody wants to do right by their community. And I think that that's kind of that big collaboration piece that we all kind of share. We have that shared value.
Yeah, so certainly I think, kind of from the technical side, which is a little bit where we more approach some of these things, because we use a different connection to the GIN database than what Vermont and Connecticut were end up using, which was GIN Connect, which is a USGA connection. We have an outside developer that did our integration. There were some issues technically around that. And also just with multi-members golfers that may have data that comes in from all three associations or two of them, and kind of making sure we keep which data needs to go into which bucket, to make sure it's accurate. The partitioning of everything, obviously that's the cornerstone of this business unit setup. You have to make sure that we are only looking at golfers that are in company, and clubs that are mass golf related, at least, at a employee level, and same thing for Connecticut, same thing for Vermont. They want to make sure they're only sending, our big concern obviously was sending out a renew email to every contact on accident. And, Vermont golfers getting this, be like, why is Mass Golf emailing me? Connecticut golfers being like, oh, you made a renew here with Mass Golf, like just got a confusion. So there were some issues around there, and just making sure everything was partitioned out properly. And then certainly, obviously, the kind of the initial growing pains of using HubSpot for the first time for our business units, their associations. People want to get in there. Sometimes they want to get in there with a little bit of enthusiasm, maybe a little trigger happy, as it were, and just making sure we kind of set expectations, be like, all right, we'll definitely get to this. If you have any questions, go ahead and let us know. Don't, we didn't want them to go down the wrong path and then have to kind of backtrack and do things a little bit, make sure they were set up. So we want to make sure they were set up from the start. So I think maybe we were a little bit more like, let's go a little slow, but obviously people want to get in, they want to get hands-on and start using the features that they see. And I think that, again, just kind of balancing those two different expectation levels and kind of goals.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think just going off of that with the point that you've evolved to, are there any tweaks or changes that you're kind of planning or looking ahead into the future with both of these business units?
Yeah, I think we're going to be looking at kind of keeping the data management just a little bit tighter. You can always grow on that a little bit more. currently, when we set them up, we had the permissions quite limited. And as we've been evolving the relationship and showing them more tools, we've been adding more permissions, adding more objects for them, just to be able to use, again, kind of taking those training wheels off. Like Mike said, I definitely was one of the people that was moving a little bit slower in the beginning, just because I was getting my footing in the golf industry. But then wanted to make sure that they had everything they needed too. And my biggest goal was to make sure that we were partitioning our data and not affecting the mass golf data or their data or anything like that, because that would just be very scary and everything would get real dirty real quick. I think as far as tweaks or changes, I think it's going to be whatever the AGAs are looking to add on as we continue to grow, as they understand the system a little bit more, and likely placing more people in that position to be able to do that. I think that that's kind of what will happen.
Yeah, I would just say, obviously, I echo what Riley says. I think we've definitely learned as we've gone along with the business unit setup. Certainly some things we may do a little bit differently, some points of emphasis we may make more a priority, if and when we add another business unit association. But the other thing I think that I'm kind of excited about is not only are we kind of showing them ways to use HubSpot, but I think, as they go through this process, they'll probably find ways to use it for the associations that we didn't even think of or weren't using it currently. So again, like up to this point, we've kind of been saying, hey, this is how we do it, or this is how we use it. But they'll definitely become, come a point where they're like, oh, well, we use it. We just set up this new workflow and it does X, Y, Z. Like, oh, wow, we're not using that. We don't do it that way. We don't use that currently. Let's look into it, potentially apply it to our operations. So I just think it'll be a growing kind of, collaboration between the business units and Mass Golf. And again, certainly, as Riley said, we'll continue to show them things, and I'm sure they'll show us some stuff as well as they get in and use it, on a full-time basis.
Yeah, absolutely, Mike. Again, we're going to continuously learn from each other. And that's kind of the beauty of this, is having somebody else in there, another set of eyes to look it over or give their opinion. I think it's pretty helpful.
And then just in terms of a collaboration of this size, obviously there was a lot of work that went into this, on both your parts and everyone of Mass Golf Vermont and Connecticut. What advice would you give to an association that's looking to either build a similar business unit setup, or on the flip side, a smaller AGA that might be kind of interested in joining someone else's existing business unit?
Yeah, I'm going to start with the smaller AGA side. I think it's extremely helpful for them and for their golfers if you're going to leverage using HubSpot, having that support of another organization, seeing the examples that they've already used, seeing what's already been done, and just sort of building off of that. And to what we were talking about earlier is that collaboration piece. Once they're in there and they're understanding what they're using, then you start to get real powerful and you get to be able to build your own things, and just sort of have that not self-discovery, but that self-learning aspect of it too. And like, hey, like, let me use this tool. Let's see how I can make this better. Or even just like emails and some of the reporting and stuff. It can really help like smaller orgs that way. And again, to have that support from another organization is huge.
Yeah, I agree, Riley. I think, from a perspective of a smaller association potentially being added as a BU, I think the most, the thing that has helped us the most is if they establish and kind of communicate their end goals, like what they want to use it for in 2025, and then potentially, the first year and then the second year, and then, the points of like, okay, if we only accomplish 3 things that we need for this year or whatever year they take on, like that helps us kind of set the time, or would set any, account user the be able to set the timeline and the agendas and make sure that we accomplish those. If we don't get to anything else, at least we've accomplished the 3 things that the business unit association wanted to get going, for that year. Let's say it's 25 or 26. And from the association, maybe the larger associations, I think just being open-minded to being able to take on a business unit. Like, again, the idea is that we're trying to help everybody in the association world, in the AGA, the AGA community, kind of grow and maybe be more efficient, be more powerful with their CRM tools. And I think, again, just kind of not being so siloed and kind of determined by the borders of the state. I mean, we obviously have an existing relationship with a lot of the AGAs in New England through the New England Golf Association, and the fact that we're obviously so close geographically to each other. We have a lot of golfers that share memberships with Connecticut and Vermont and Mass and Rhode Island and New Hampshire. So I think there's a natural connection there. But certainly for other associations, just being, like I said, a little bit willing to go outside of your borders and say, I can, we're doing it this way. We can certainly share that with our neighbors or other AGAs that want to be involved.
And then just out of curiosity, is Mass Golf open to, which, there's conversations ongoing with this, but open to adding additional associations as a business unit under Mass Golf?
Yeah, I would certainly say we do have some openness to doing that. I think it would have to be the right situation. Certainly, obviously, I think geographic proximity probably is something that we would look at when making those determinations. But absolutely, obviously, I think once you've kind of done it, the ability to kind of do that again for another association is obviously a little bit more appetizing, because you do know kind of what to expect, and some of the you learn from your past endeavors and kind of go that way. So I think obviously we would certainly be open to that if the right situation came up.
Absolutely. I'll agree with that sentiment. Again, like you said, we've already kind of been through it twice now, and it is like if somebody needs the support, I'm personally always happy to help, but it seems to be a bigger decision than my own.
Absolutely. And then just in closing, is there anything that we did not touch on or cover today that you think would be helpful for other associations to know about just your setup or just your experience so far?
I think we've kind of said pretty much everything. Just one point just to reiterate is just like that pushing of kind of push yourself a little bit outside your comfort zone. Make we talk about Riley's a little bit more. She's like to double check, triple check. I'm more inclined to just say, hey, just pull the trigger and see what happens, and then we'll fix it on the back end if needed. So kind of balancing those two different ideologies, I think makes for a really successful, process, and can kind of lead to some really, really good things. Like I said, just I think being open-minded to different types of connections, different types of processes is really important in the business unit setup.
Yeah. And I think to that point too, it is just like, hey, like you need to reach your golfers where they're at. So if that means SMS, if that means automated messaging, if that means automatic replies that come from a bot, like to get an answer over to somebody quick, it might be that, and that's how you're best serving those golfers. I think that's really important to think about too at the end of the day. Another thing is just like technology is always growing, technology is always changing, but that's kind of how everything is. You got to kind of keep up to date with what's going on, and again, meet those golfers where they are.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just want to thank Riley, Mike, the both of you for taking the time to talk about your business units. Collaboration is key, and I know we all know that. And I just want to give a huge recognition to obviously Riley, Mike, everyone with Mass Golf, Connecticut, Vermont that has played a role in this. It's really awesome to see collaboration and just how things can evolve. So thank you both so much. And I am really looking forward just to see how your HubSpot business units continue to evolve over time.
As a reminder, if your association would like to highlight a program or initiative, please reach out to me, Santana Shipley at shipley@iaga.org.